Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video, we're going to be adding functionality to our first web app. So head on over to replit.com, go to My REPLs, and open up the project that you've been working on. So for me, that's this project here. Now, in order to give myself maximum space programming, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop open the website in full view. You'll also see that this little mini viewer, for a lot of you and for me right now, looks pretty terrible. But if I go to the full-size site, everything looks correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover that up so I have maximum room to program. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to be working mostly in the JavaScript part of our computer today, or part of our website today. In fact, actually, let me just make sure that my JavaScript file is working. So a common thing that you can do to make sure that the file is working is you can just have an alert and say, hey. And this way, when somebody goes to the page, if the JavaScript is working, it will just pop up, hey. And we know how to do that from our previous project where we were building the Mad Libs project. So what I'm going to do next is, now that I know my JavaScript file is working, I'm going to delete this hey. And I want to start to connect the code here with the elements that we created using HTML. So to do that, I'm going to need a way to kind of mimic the structure of CSS, which is select something and then add, in CSS's case, style to it. In JavaScript, it will be select something and then add functionality to it. So in order for me to select these buttons, I need a unique way to identify each one of these buttons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to those elements on my HTML page, and I'm going to give them a unique identifier. And the way that you do this is you say, inside of the opening tag, ID equals, and then this can be any word that I want to be. So I'm going to call this hey button. Now you'll notice that I used camel case here, where I have a lowercase and then uppercase. You can't have two separate words for an ID. We have to have a single word. So my ID here is hey button. And I'm going to give each of these a different ID. So an ID should only apply to one object on the page. The same way that like maybe you are the only person with your name, and that's the way that your teacher could call on you. The ID is the way that we can kind of reference this specific element. So this is the one with, this is the hey button, okay. This is going to be the sup button. And you'll have different names for yours. I'm trying to pick button names that are applicable to mine. I'll just make that what's up button, like that. And this will be ID equals, and then in quotes, bye button, all one word. All right, so when we're doing JavaScript, we want a way to connect with these HTML elements. So similar to CSS, we're going to start off by selecting each of these elements and then adding functionality. So I'm going to head over to my JavaScript file, and I'm going to show you a lot of new features today. One new feature is if you type 2 slashes before you start writing something, the text will be green or gray on your page. And what this is called is it's called a comment. It's text that doesn't get read for coding, but it gets read for the programmer. And it makes it easier in order for the programmer to code. So, or to read their own code or to code. So what I'm going to say here is I'm going to say what I'm going to be doing in the lines of code below. Select the buttons on my page. And this line is a comment. It doesn't get read when it processes the code, but it helps the user to understand, or me, the coder, to understand exactly what's going on here in the code. So in the next few lines, I'm going to be selecting those buttons. So I've made for us a JavaScript cheat sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my cheat sheet. It's actually called Toolbox. It's just going to be a collection of all the different tools that we developed this year. So in order to connect my JavaScript page with my HTML page, I'm going to select the elements using their ID. So I'm going to use this line of code here. So I'm going to copy and paste it. And there are a couple things that I'll need to change. So let me see if I understand what's going on here. Let means I'm creating a variable for JavaScript. I'm going to go to the HTML document, and I'm going to get an element by its ID. So let me do this one at a time. The ID of my first element was hey button. So I'm going to copy that here. Oh, hey button. And I'm going to say, okay, well, in this template, the ID of the element that I'm getting is hey button. And instead of saying let variable name equal this, variable name was just a placeholder. So I'm going to call this hey button as well. Now, this might be a bit confusing for you. You're like, why does it say hey button twice? And these hey buttons mean different things. So what I'm saying is create a variable, and instead of calling it X or Y like we would do in math class, call it hey button. And inside of that variable, store the value, which is go to the document and find the element that has an ID of hey button. I'm going to do the same thing for my other buttons. So now that I have this once, I'm going to select my other buttons here. So the next one was, I think, what's up button. And the next one was buy button. And I made a horrible mistake. I've only changed these in one place. What I really want to do is I want to say let what's up button be, go to the HTML document, and get the element with the ID of what's up button. So I'm going to change this hey to what's up button. And I think buy button had the ID of buy button. So now, similar to CSS, although a little bit differently, it looks a little different, it looks a little complicated here. I've got my buttons selected, and I'm ready to add functionality to them. So when we add functionality to buttons, in this case what we're going to be adding is something called an event listener. So whenever the user interacts with the web page, we click a button or we type some text, these are all events going on our page. And I have to tell this button to be ready for a click event. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to use my cheat sheet. But before I do that, sorry, I want to stick with the structure of comments. So I'm going to add another comment to help me understand what's going on in the code here, which is add functionality to the buttons when they are clicked. All right, so now that I've got my comment here outlining what I'm about to do with my code, I'm going to use my cheat sheet. So I'm going to add something called an event listener, because I'd like that button to listen for that user click events. So listen kind of means just ready for that. So the easiest way to do this is to copy and paste it from our toolbox. You'll notice that a lot of the structure in JavaScript uses this strange capitalization. So here it's lowercase, uppercase, uppercase, uppercase. Each new word is uppercase, and we see that here as well. It starts lowercase, and then each new word is uppercase. Now, a common mistake is that students misspell this or make a mistake with the parentheses. It's easy to avoid this by just using copy and paste. It doesn't make you a better programmer, I don't think, to type it out. I think it just takes a longer time. So let me see if I can understand what's going on here. I'm going to be taking some element from my HTML page and telling it to listen for an event. Well, the element that I want to listen for an event is this first button. So I'm going to say, hey button, I'm going to add an event listener to you. And the type of event that you're listening for, there are many of these, is going to be a click event. So I'm going to delete this generic event type and put click. Okay, so hey button, which is the thing that has an ID of hey button. I'm going to add an event listener to you. It's going to be a click event. And when somebody clicks you, the function that I want you to run goes here. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm going to say each button should make something pop up. And I know that to make something pop up, I just type alert. So I'm going to say that when they click the hey button, it should say, hey guys, it's Carrie, and in this video, so let me give a quick view to my document and see, or to my website and see if this is working. So I reload, I click the hey button, and so after I click, it runs that function and says, hey guys, it's Carrie, and in this video, And in the next video, we're going to figure out how to make this text not appear here, but appear here. But we're going to keep it like this for all of the buttons in this video. So the way that I like to organize my document is I like to select all of the elements I'm going to interact with here. Then I'm going to add similar functionality to each button here. So I have to think to myself, okay, if I want to add similar functionality to the other two buttons, what am I going to be copying and pasting, and what's going to be changing? So I'm going to say, okay, this Hey button is sort of a template for what's going on with the other buttons. Let me just paste it down here. And then what's going to change is the next one, I want the What's Up button to have some different functionality. Let's see. So the What's Up button should also listen for a click event. And when it gets clicked, the function that's run is, instead of saying this, I want to say, how was your weekend? And it's a good idea that when you're first starting to code, or even when you're a more experienced coder, that every time you add some new functionality, you test it out. So let me refresh this. My Hey button still works. My What's Up button works as well. Next up, I want to enable the Buy button to work. So you can either go to the toolbox, but in this case, I think because the functionality is so similar, it's easier just to copy and paste one of these. So what needs to change? I want to add functionality to the Buy button. So Buy button, which is the thing that has the ID of Buy button. Oh, I did an autocomplete there. There we go. Buy button is back. Add event listener. When they click on it, the function that we want to run is have a wonderful rest of your day. All right, I added new functionality to my page. So I go to my website, I refresh it, and I want to make sure that all three buttons work. Hey guys, Carrie, in this video, how was your weekend? And have a wonderful rest of your day. So we're going to figure out how to make this text appear here in the next video instead of as a pop-up. But for today, the key things that you learned is how to add an ID to an HTML element, how to select elements so that we can add functionality to them. And this way we have a JavaScript syntax word that refers to that element on our website. And then how to add the functionality using this template, add event listener, which looks a little bit crazy. But once you have the toolbox, it's just a matter of copying and pasting and changing out a couple of things. I hope you guys found this video helpful and you're ready to start creating your own web apps that have their own functionality. Bye, guys.